Gail sighed. She was bored. So bored that she would have been ecstatic if the roof had caved in and crushed all of her coworkers. She didn't really wish them to die, or had anything against them. They were nice enough people, but the things they were into were so ordinary, so mundane. Not one of them had anything interesting to offer up for conversation. It was usually how wasted they had gotten the previous weekend or some other meaningless drivel about who was sleeping with who or what the latest gossip was. She stared across the cubicles and every one of the 5 coworkers were either on their phones or fixated heavily on the computer screens in front of them, probably on a social platform of their personal preference, serving themselves up on their narcissistic platters for their cyber friends to throw likes or other meaningless icons to inflate each other's egos. A soft tone caught her attention and she glanced at the action board which upper-level management, or the gods of U-Store-Yer-Stuff would communicate with the lesser worker caste, or the slaves of the cubicle denizens. Emblazoned on the board was storage unit #B12, empty and prep for new occupants.
"Hey,"
she said in a tone which initially she believed would be just barely audible and was startled by the volume which seemed excessively loud, and yet, no one seemed to notice it but her.
"We gonna empty out number 12 on B level. Anyone? Seriously?"
She waited and it was as if no one could hear her. She sighed. At least there was something to actually do other than wait. She stood and stretched, staring at the others who had ignored the board's edicts. Janice was the office clown and always shared the latest memes with the team. Derek was the IT guru, and if a computer or other cyber-connected device needed help, he was the go-to guy. Tyler was the social media expert and would blast deals or upcoming promotions to customers or potential customers interested in deals. Sarah was the scheduling admin and was the one who would grant overtime or even the base hours. Crossing her would result in less work and less pay. Jackie was the last and she was customer support. She dealt with all the assholes and she thrived in that capacity. All of them were supposed to be available to help with the day-to-day cleanup and setups. But Gail realized it wasn't happening today. The team acted as if no messages had appeared on the action board.
"Whatever,"
she said as she grabbed her leather work gloves and the bolt cutter. She walked out of the room and as she did, she could hear the shuffling of her feet on the concrete corridor. There was a distinct soft swooshing sound as she did, and she liked it. It was comforting to her and she was unsure why that was. She arrived at the main freight elevator and saw a couple of carts that were tilted and not sitting perfectly symmetrical to each other. She pressed the call button on the elevator and then remedied the vulgar carts, and when the door opened the carts were neatly arranged and perfect in her eyes. She nodded to herself in approval and stepped into the elevator. She knew that she needed to go to the subbasement level 3 because that was the blue level, or B level. She pressed the button next to the B level which had the extra redundancy of a blue weathered and aged sticker that was starting to peel away, and she told herself she would remedy that when she had a chance. The elevator ride was short, and she listened as it groaned and moaned in protest of the harsh working environment it found itself laboring in. She would watch the video feed of the customers as they would routinely overload the ancient elevator, and she had herself pointed out to many of them the weight limit of the machine was 2,000 pounds, and if they overloaded it, it was almost guaranteed that the elevator would get stuck. Her warnings always fell on deaf ears. She silently would giggle as the same customers would get stuck. She fantasized that she and the elevator were in cahoots and that she was the only human who was allied with it. None of the other workers had the rapport she did with the equipment and gear at the U-Store-Yer-Stuff. She was the only full-time employee who had never been stuck inside of the elevator.
She exited the elevator and walked down the older corridor and counted out the units as she passed them.
B1, B2, B3 empty. B4, B5, B6, B7, B8, B9, B10, B11, and B12.
She knew she didn't have a backup key for the unit since it was on B level and was one of the older units. The newer digital units were on the top floor. The ones on B level were from the founders of the old storage company. They had simple doors which had a sliding bolt, and the bolt had an area where a padlock could slide in and lock the bolt in place. She examined the lock and noted it had an ornate old-fashioned padlock, of a design she had never seen before. The engravings on it was very detailed and depicted butterflies in flight above a base of grass and flowers. Along the edges of the lock was an ornate frame engraved on the surface of the metal which she guessed was bronze. It looked to her to be more art than function, and it was a bulky thing. It was strong, she realized as she tugged at it. She hated the idea of using the bolt cutter on the lock and wondered if there was a way to remove it without damaging it more that would be required.
"You really are magnificent,"
she said to the lock.
"Would be a shame to cut you to pieces. How's about you just unlock, and then you'll live to lock another day? What do you say?"
She tugged on the lock again, expecting it to still be solid and steadfast in its assigned duties, and was completely shocked when it opened with a gentle click.
Huh. Well, thank you for obliging me,
she said with a grin. She pocketed the lock-in and then pulled the bolt free and lifted the metal grate that had sealed the room. Her nose was instantly assailed with a pungent, strong stale smell which was much more pronounced than dust or other standard tenants of the storage facility. No, there was something else within the darkness which produced a horrid odor unlike anything she had ever smelled before.
Yuck. What the hell died in here?
She flipped on the light switch and was frozen in her place as her brain worked hard to process and understand the visage she beheld before her. There was a pentagram on the floor traced in what she guessed was blood. The color of it was an off-brown and she thought it must be very old as it was almost faded. Old burnt candles were at the corners of the pentagram and within the center of the pentagram was an iron box with flourish and etchings that she realized were similar in craftsmanship as the padlock. The same padlock which seemed to allow her access of its own accord. On the box there were more locks and also wax. The seams of the box seemed to be sealed with wax and someone had taken great pains to seal it completely. The archaic container was also wrapped with electrical tape and duct tape. She realized it wasn't added as an afterthought but almost seemed to be a pattern in the way it was wrapped. She felt perhaps there was a legitimate reason for the electrical tape and duct tape, and the reason eluded her. Other than the pentagram and the box there was a dresser. The walls were bare and the unit itself was empty and she noted there wasn't the normal amount of dust she would see on units that hadn't been visited often. As far as she knew she had never heard of anyone ever opening the unit up while she had been employed at the storage company. Turning her attention to the dresser, she noted the top drawer of it was open and hanging precariously at an odd angle and looked as if it would fall with the slightest of jostles. Since the dresser was well outside of the pentagram, she felt it was a safer of the two objects to examine. As she peered inside, she saw there was a long knife of some sort which was severely rusted and stained with the same brownish material which she suspected and was sure was blood. She cautiously slid the drawer in more securely but didn't close it completely and could still see the blade clearly. It caught what little light shone into the drawer and almost seemed to glow.
Shit,
she said as she considered the room in front of her. This was not at all what she was expecting. The storage area measured 40 by 40 and was 20 tall. It was one of the larger rooms of the establishment. She pulled out a small tablet that each of the employees were assigned and were responsible for, and she entered the storage unit information into it and waited for details to come up about the room. The customer's name flashed on the screen. And she read particulars of the contract and was amazed to see that the storage was prepaid, and when they had reached out for the new payment plan, they couldn't find the owner. The fact that the storage unit was prepaid didn't surprise her. What did surprise her was the duration of time which had been prepaid. Someone had paid for 50 years up front. She double-checked the date of the contract and it was May 15, 1969.
Okay. A little weird.
She examined the records more and the customer was named Anton Valadova. The photo was missing, as was other bits of information that would be in the file, and she understood with how old the order was, there would be no email address or cell phone number in the file. As far as she knew, she had never heard of a unit being prepaid for such a long period. She knew the original facility named U-Store-Yer-Stuff had been acquired from a company named U-Store-Yer-Stuff, and then it was bought again by U-Store-Yer-Stuff, which was a nationwide chain. She found it odd that no one had known about the mysterious storage unit. She turned her attention back to the dresser and, glancing at the blade, wondered what it had been used for. She decided to close the drawer and lock the unit back up and get someone better suited to handle what was an obvious crime scene. As she pressed the drawer and it bounced, and she heard first a chittering noise and then,
ouch!
From within the dresser. Alarmed by the declaration of pain, she pulled the drawer open again and said,
Oh my. I apologize, are you okay?
Yes, thank you. You almost squished me.
said a soft female voice.
Squished?
Yes.
You're inside the dresser.
Indeed I am.
You stuck in there?
Yup.
She looked at the dresser and saw it was indeed a large dresser, but not nearly large enough to hold a person inside, and yet there she was, having a conversation with someone or something. The dresser was roughly 5 feet tall and 3 feet wide. It was more than 3 feet deep. It had 3 large drawers, with the top one open more than halfway, and asked,
How did you get stuck?
I guess as I slept, I grew. Been here a mighty long time.
I can help you get out, or at the very least, give you more room to breathe maybe.
That would be lovely.
Gail pulled the top drawer out and put it on the top of the dresser, careful not to disturb the rusty blade within it. The drawer was heavy, and some of it she figured was the actual weight of the blade. She grunted as she set it on the top of the dresser.
Does that help?
Yes, but the next drawer has one of my legs pinned. Would you be a dear and pull it slightly?
Sure.
She pulled the second drawer out and she felt something wiggle against it as she did, and then there was a slight thudding sound followed by 3 more thuds.
Ah, that's what I needed. Reach in and give me something to hold on to so I can climb out of here.
With no hesitation or fear, Gail reached in and felt some fabric, soft and velvety, and then something crawled upon her hand. It was slightly larger than the width of her hand, and in amazement, she watched as an ebony spider crawled up her arm, and its legs gave her skin goosebumps as she crawled up her arm free of the dresser. Midway up her arm, Gail was able to see the spider clearly. It was a black widow, but by no means a normal one. This one had an abdomen the size of a large coffee mug and the legs were as thick as pencils. Clearly visible on the head were various eyes which Gail could feel were studying her. The stylized sleek torso captivated Gail, and as the arachnid crawled up her arm she had displayed her beautiful crimson hourglass to Gail.
Wow.
Gail said, with not an ounce of fear within her.
You amaze me, Gail O'Brien,
said the spider as she noted how calm Gail was.
You know me.
I know you. I've been waiting a good long time for you to come down here and stumble upon me.
How is this possible? You're very large for a Latrodectus. I'm not sure if you're Latrodectus hesperus or Latrodectus variolus. And you said a long time waiting. How long?
At least 5 years. That's when you started working here, yes?
Gail nodded.
Well, you've lived longer than your species is supposed to. Perhaps that's why you're so large.
And I suppose that also explains how I can speak with you?
Asked the spider sarcastically.
No, odd things speak to me all the time.
Gail replied without missing a beat.
Yes, this is true. You're special, aren't you, Gail? I would say even extraordinary.
Gail blushed slightly.
Weird. Freak. Loser. That's how people usually refer to me,
she said dejectedly.
Ah, the sheep are quick to mock the wolf. Who doesn't know she's a wolf?
What are you talking about?
What are sheep to the wolf, my dear?
Asked the spider with a deadly tone in her voice.
Food.
Gail replied.
Exactly.
I'm no wolf.
Ah, but you are. You are the proverbial wolf in sheep's clothing. You are indeed special. Your blood is different. You are intelligent, beautiful, fit, and strong. And yes, if you were not, the barrier to this room would not have allowed you in.
That is interesting, and you are full of flattery. Apologies, you know my name even though I never formally introduced myself. That's very rude of me. But I also do not know who I am speaking to.
Don't fret, my lovely Gail. I've gone by many names, but you may refer to me as grandmother.
Grandmother. Even though somehow you know my name already, allow me to introduce myself. I am Gail O'Brien.
Yes, and you know your birthright, Gail O'Brien?
Birthright?
Yes. You are meant for great things, Gail O'Brien of Clan O'Brien, direct descendant of High King of Ireland, Brian Boru of the Dalgi Kais.
Really? You are playing games with me, grandmother?
No, I am not. Do you enjoy riddles and puzzles?
Gail nodded and smiled as she watched grandmother climb further up her arm until she rested on her shoulder. The spider was heavy.
This room is a puzzle. The blade you saw in the top drawer is a piece of the puzzle, and the iron box you saw when you first entered the room is the other. They both rely on each other.
Gail nodded as she listened and pursed her lips, which was something she would do when she was deep in contemplation.
Why was it placed here?
Asked Gail.
It was placed here as a test. One person before you tried to solve it and they failed. I ate him.
Oh.
Yes, I'm afraid the cost of failure on this game is severe. But I assure you the prize is grand.
Really?
Suspicion grew in Gail as she tilted her head and gazed at grandmother.
Yes, especially for you, my dear Gail.
Me? Why? What could I possibly want? I have a shitty one-bedroom apartment. I have this amazing job here making slave wages. I am loathed by my peers. What else in this grand world could I ever aspire to possess?
Grandmother laughed a lovely little laugh which made Gail smile authentically.
As I alluded to earlier, my dear, you are a wolf, but you have been forced to hide in your shell. Solve this puzzle and the world will once again know the power of true royalty. They will quake and quiver beneath your gaze.
Gail considered the prize and weighed it against all she possessed and her lackluster bucket list. She laughed to herself slightly.
What is it, child?
Nothing, I just realized one of my early bucket list items when I started writing them down.
There was a glimmer in grandmother's eyes that matched Gail's.
Yes, say it.
I wanted to rule the world.
And there it is. You've always known deep inside you were meant to rule these lesser beings, and you are indeed smart enough to solve the riddle and open the box. But the only question is, are you strong enough to do what needs to be done?
Ah, and there it is,
said Gail, now seeing there was a solid but.
Yes, the crux of the situation.
Agreed grandmother.
You know the solutions, and I have to figure them out. Failure to do so, and then I become dinner.
Rules are rules. You could just put me back in the drawer with Durandal.
Did you say Durandal?
Aye.
Then grandmother, I believe you are indeed spinning a yarn. The blade Durandal you speak of enchained into the side of a mountain, and is a sword. That blade in the drawer there is a knife, not a sword.
Again, grandmother giggled, and Gail was sure if it were possible the large spider would be smiling.
You are smart, as I said, and know a great many things. But alas, much of what you know, child, are lies and half-truths. Win the prize and all hidden things will be known to you. I'll give you this one for free. Yes, there is a blade chained to the mountain in Rokomander. But that is but one aspect of the blade. There are many variations of the blade. What you see in the drawer there is but one of many reflections.
Reflections?
Yes, sometimes what we see in the mirror is just a simple reflection on glass, but something much more profound and powerful.
Gail wasn't afraid. Not of mythological blades, talking spiders, or even the probable event of being eaten by said spider. What did send a chill through her was the box. Something stirred within it and she could feel it. Grandmother noticed Gail's attention and said, "Ah, the second part of the game. What is in the box? Should the box be opened? How does it relate to the blade?"
Yes, I suppose specific questions regarding it are off limits.
Indeed.
There's something important in it though. I know that much. But I'll admit something to you, grandmother. What is in it scares me to my core, and I do not know why. I am intrigued by all of this. Answer me this then, how much time do I have for this puzzle?
24 hours.
How will I know if I beat the puzzle?
I will be there to announce it.
And if I lose?
I will be there to slay you, Gail O'Brien.
And if I just walk away now?
You won't.
Gail stared at grandmother and a small smile played on her face.
How do you know?
Because the hell you live now is far worse than the potential of being my dinner. You are for all practical purposes a dead woman waiting to die. I am offering you a chance to actually live.
Gail's smile faded away and she felt a pang of pain in her chest. There was some truth in what grandmother said, and that small amount wounded Gail.
Fine. I'll play the game, because as you pointed out, I'm already among the dead. Are there clues? Rules?
Yes, the rules are simple. You may do anything you feel will help you solve the puzzle. And as far as clues, the second drawer has them inside.
Grandmother jumped off of Gail's shoulder and the force of it shoved Gail's shoulder back slightly. The Black Widow landed gracefully and firmly in the top drawer and waited as Gail opened the second drawer. As Gail opened it, she glanced at her watch, which told her it was 3:33 p.m.
So, I have until tomorrow at 3:33 p.m. to solve this puzzle.
Yes.
Then I better hurry, yes.
Yes.
Gail looked in the drawer and there was a burgundy velvet cloak. She took it out and it revealed a worn piece of parchment. Written in hurried hand it read, "Twiddle twiddle struggle and strife, what has aged must be brought to life. Hold the edge this way and that, but must be sheathed sleeping as a bat. Enemies yours are enemies mine, slaughter them as you would a swine. Keep the spoils nice and neat, beware those who may be sweet. Every action price to pay, in the end you'd wish you didn't play. Yet rewards are true, matched in levels to feats you do. Iron rusts as iron breaks, but to remove the bonds would be mistake. Solutions lies with the tasks above, mixed with shattering of true love. Bold actions hidden from crowds, as simple as donning bloodied shroud. Lovers' chambers hold a key, to make the blade what it's meant to be. Only through pain can you grow, and the truth will you know. O'Brien, my dear, do not give in to fear. Durandal awakened will guide your hand, sweet Gail, do you understand? Gail read it through once and paused at the end. Then she read it again and smiled.
The blade is key to all of this. And opening the box is the objective here.
Perhaps.
The game was meant for me obviously, and I can't undo what's been set in motion, correct?
Correct.
Will you come with me then as I travel and find the answers?
I'm afraid not. I shall remain here waiting for you.
What if I don't return?
You will.
How do you know?
Fate. I know these things.
Gail reached into the top drawer to grab the blade and she felt a slight pinch and saw grandmother near her arm.
Ouch.
And also the poison will kill you in 25 hours. Another bite from me and you'll be cured.
Gail was shocked and then smiled at grandmother, understanding why she was bit.
An insurance policy.
Yes, the rules are rules and I have to follow them to the letter. No more, no less.
Gail nodded and wasn't mad. She held the blade in her hand and there was an electrical sensation from the rough exterior of it. It was so rusted it almost appeared to be encased in the material. She turned her hand and saw the small puncture wounds and realized grandmother had only used the tips of her massive fangs to inject her. The wound ached and burned.
Will the venom interfere?
Gail asked, nervous that as the venom coursed through her veins that the pain would increase and cause problems.
No. It will grow no worse in pain until the 24 hours have passed. After that, the hour remaining will be the most agonizing thing you will ever feel, growing exponentially worse until you die.
Understood. Anything else you want to add?
Yes. Ignore the white rabbit if she shows up.
White rabbit? Seriously? Any other animals, monsters, etc. am I to be wary of?
No, she is the only one who may try to distract you and lead to your demise.
Why?
Because it's her job.
Okay. Seems everyone and everything has some sort of job now. I will gather the items and leave you for now, grandmother.
Gail took another look at grandmother, who seemed to settle down and sat with her legs crossed. She then retrieved the knife and glanced at the iron box on the ground. She wondered what it was in the box and she had a distinct feeling that whatever it was immensely important. She retrieved the burgundy cloak and the piece of parchment and exited the unit and closed the sliding door. She fished the lock from her pocket and secured the room again, making sure no one else would enter the room.